Welcome back, everyone, to a new episode of Mondays with Micah. I hope you have been enjoying this summer series called Being a Watchman. I have Pastor Hank Teague here for a new show. He is kind of new to the area. You're under a year, right?
I am. Just hit the year mark, 1st of July.
Okay. All right. He is my neighbor. So howdy, neighbor. And I'm one of the ones who are like, are you the girl that walks? Or I said, yes, I am one of the ones. But yes, the widow walk. I am a widow that walks. And it wasn't fully correlated when we titled this nonprofit. But we did not meet directly as me walking and trespassing into his yard to introduce myself. I did not do that. But he was at a fun event that I got to do in the winter with the Rawls Museum. And some of y'all, if you remember those posts, that we were doing this whole thing about renewal, the art of healing. And there was art all over the place from people who have gone through different types of loss and tragedy, whether it was through losing a child, and their creative expression of how they process their grief in the form of art. And that was through music, that was through poetry, that was through like water paintings, oil paintings, different crafts that they had. There was a whole section of people that had lost children that had gotten tattoos. And so there was all these pictures of the different parents, if you want to call, that had gotten tattoos and part of their story. So it was really I really felt hope and life on that exhibit, which was so exciting to me. The word renewal in itself has a lot of significance, but that was where Hank was chosen to come and be part of a panel, which I did not know there was going to be a panel that night.
I didn't know there was going to be music.
And so I thought I was there to feature my art, which was in a form of a song. And there was supposed to be multiple artists. There was 4, I think, that submitted music. Only 2 of us ended up being there that night. And so then they took the second half to do an open conversation about mental health and loss, and it kind of spilled over into a few different things about our health too. And so that's where I met Hank, and I said, I have got to get him on the show. No, he's not a widower, so it wasn't fitting. But this summer, doing this Being a Watchman series, I believe pastors are on the front lines and are first responders within their flock, their membership. And I was supposed to be doing a blog this morning with a pastor, and he called me and he said, hey, one of our members passed away, and I have to go. I said, I absolutely understand. So case in point, y'all, the pastors are on call kind of 24/7, if that's correct.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And so the clergy is always on call, and sometimes you're walking into some pretty hard situations. And so thank you for coming on the show. And so I told him, look, I don't really know anything about you. I have a feeling there's a lot of people in this community that don't. And I'm always curious to see where you people came from to come here, because I really believe Franklin is a very eclectic town. There's a lot of culture that comes. And when I got to interview Pastor Charles Qualls earlier this year, I have known him longer because he's been here almost 10 years, I think, actually. And he said this has been his favorite place, and that they are going to retire here, actually.
Yes, they are.
And so I love hearing that, y'all. As a real estate agent, when you're showing property, and our job is to really bring you home, and I don't know if you know this, Pastor Hank, but that real estate is my vocation. Things have transitioned here where I'm doing more in resource and nonprofit work now, but my tagline for my business is "We walk you home."
I did not know that, but that's a great line.
And so, yes, here at the Widow Walk, we're here to walk with you, but my real estate part of this business is that I'm here to really help walk you home. And that has a lot of connotation. There's a spiritual component to that,
Mhm.
that we are journeying through life and that this life is a journey. And so, how far back do you want to start in your journey?
I can start way back, but I will fast forward
Okay.
a lot.
Okay.
I grew up in eastern North Carolina in Wayne County, which is halfway between Raleigh and the coast.
Okay.
Uh, have been a part of the church forever. I can't remember when I wasn't. And I remember my call to ministry happening when I was sitting with my parents. We sat at certain pew, Pine Forest United Methodist Church, and the light was coming from a stained glass window to my left, and I would be bored and watch the light play across as the day progressed. And I remember we had a guest preacher who was preaching and talking about how God called him to the ministry. And God spoke to me then, and it's not audible for me. My sister, maybe so. But for me, it was, I tell people, it's like your conscience on steroids.
I love that.
Okay. So you too, Hank, is the feeling and the thought and the sound that I heard. You too, Hank. And I said, no, I don't think so. I'm too shy. I'm too introverted. I don't see how I could ever have anything to say to a whole bunch of people. And in line with our discussion today, how could I ever carry another person's burdens I can't handle on my own? This is age 10. Okay.
Hey, that's deep.
How I don't think so. If you've ever had a call, and it doesn't have to be a pastoral or clerical call, you probably know how this is. It doesn't go away. It comes back. Push it back. Fast forward 20 more years, and I'm married, got kids, working in a forestry career, not with Union Camp, but with a forestry career.
Okay, good.
And I finally answered that call. Went to Virginia Union Seminary in Richmond. While I still worked, I went to what was then a very innovative program where we went to school on the weekends, worked during the week.
Okay.
That was before internet and stuff like that. And it's also one of the best kept secrets around. Virginia Union is a historically black school.
Okay.
And so I was a minority for the first time in my life. Living anywhere in the southeast of the U.S., I was a minority, and I got a great experience there. So, fast forward, I've finished seminary, and immediately, pretty much started in as a pastor in a Methodist church, and I've done everything from as a layperson, being heavily involved as a layperson, and then doing children and youth ministry and Christian education, and then I've pastored 5 churches since the year 2000, 5 churches all in southeastern Virginia. And I think what people expect from preachers, from pastors, is they're there for you when you get married and when you die. I don't care if you're a heathen. That's what preachers are there for. So I appreciate the invite to be a part of this.
That is interesting, thinking that you're kind of in the 3 cycles of life at births, because some churches do those like christening that or sprinkle
christening, infant baptisms.
Right.
It depends on what flavor of the church you're in.
Right. I like that term. And so you get them in infancy, you get them at marriage, a ceremony, and then the celebration of life. I really like that term more than funeral anymore.
Yes.
Because we are celebrating their life, and we're also celebrating their life after. Because I like to reinforce here at the Widow Walk that we believe that if you have asked Jesus into your heart, then the Spirit is still alive. And that is what we celebrate. And we can't wait to be united with them again. I know there's a lot of mystery about what that looks like. The scripture says you will be known as you are known. And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of an open-ended statement too. Like, known as what? Like, is that? But I will say that when I've gone other places and to other churches where you didn't know the people, or you're out shopping and somehow you strike a conversation and believer, you're like, I just knew it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is this spiritual connection that's kind of unsaid, but sensed. And that happens to me on a regular basis. And there was a lady that I met one time, and I have not seen her since, and it's been like 3 years. And I said, we're soul sisters. Like, we met, and I believe that if she called me and said, Micah, I need you to come, we didn't have to have this longevity of relationship to know that that meant something. And so that encourages me about to be known, what all that may mean. Like, okay, if we were known in our heart by somebody else, then our heart will respond now and into eternity. So anyway, there's my little teaching here today. You can elaborate and bring any theological thoughts to it on that if you want to, or that might spark something else you want to go into.
I was thinking what you had said with the emphasis on Watchman, and it's not a word I use very often in my preaching, my language. So I got to thinking about it, and
I like this.
Biblically, watchmen were kind of what we think of. They were the guards on the tower walls, or wherever the city was, and that was their responsibility to protect the people.
Yes.
And when I was looking at watchman as a word in the Bible, there's several references, but the word that's used is also used in Psalm 121.
Okay.
And I want to share the first verse. I raise my eyes toward the mountains. Where will my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Now, say that, start with that, because this was a revelation to me. We have in the Methodist Church, we have a fairly standardized liturgy, words that we speak during a celebration of life, which I've adapted over the years, but I've kept this line, and this line is used at a graveside committal.
Okay.
And this is how it almost from the very beginning of a committal service, and the words were in there. There was no scripture reference in this particular liturgy.
Okay.
And this deals to me so much in my routine, and I've done way more funerals and celebrations of life than I would care to count.
Right.
And did a good 80-something-year-old friends just the other day, and this verse is so powerful for me because it speaks to the grief. Down in verse 8, that's the first verse. Verse 8 says, in this version, it says, the Lord will protect you on your journeys. But the word, better translated, is the Lord will watch over your going and coming from now until forever and ever.
Hey, what a beautiful verse.
That watch over is the same word for watch.
Absolutely.
And so there are people, here is God, who is the one who watches over a widow, a widower, anyone who's grieving any kind of a loss.
Absolutely.
And then I was thinking, how does God do that? Well, God's divine. God can do it anyway.
Good.
And sometimes God chooses us. And so I think there are watchmen and women out there, and what you're doing, I think, is very much that kind of thing, who warn and guide and protect those, because someone, when they are grieving, someone who's had terrible loss, that's a very vulnerable place to be. And so I'm grateful for what Widows Walk is doing. And
so here, I love that. And I don't think we have any of those particular passages on our website. There were certain ones that leapt in the process because I'm very passionate, us at the Widow Walk, and it's not just me. I do seem to be the one on the screen here, and it was something that has been birthed through pain, walking through pain, and seeing need. and really wanting to gather. And that's a word. I don't even call it meetings. There's just like we gather at the river. We're gathering together. There's something that feels softer about the idea of gathering, and pulling people. And I'll share that we had our once a month we meet, and we had it at Serve this past Saturday, and it was raining. So I was kind of like, I just don't really know. And I wasn't really getting a lot of feedback from people. So I didn't have a head count going in. And we had 2 new widows just within the last, lost their spouse within 3 months or 2 months. And we had one that drove as far as Emporia that's been coming consistently, and one that came from a Hosky that started coming this summer. And that just makes me happy. Okay. Yes. It makes me happy that I say grieving together makes everything better. There is just something that happens with the strength, and the just understanding, like the things that are kind of unsaid, but we know there's just more of that when you're with a group that understands, has been through it. And so really trying to break up some of the stigma of grief, and something that I'm also challenging within as we have conversations with them, because most of the time we're meeting at the fire department in Hunterdale, and that is more discussion. And we don't have a strict schedule or like lesson, let's call it, because I really am a little bit more spirit led with those things, and feeling like, I feel like there needs to just be space for people to process here today. And I usually have to use myself and how I'm feeling to kind of break open a little bit the conversation with my own vulnerability, and then that spills over into other people's cup. And something that came up in an early summer meeting was that widows and widowers really struggle with sleeping in the night hour. Have you found that to be true, whether you did counseling with any of your widows? Why do you think sleep, again, you're talking about this vulnerable place, and then sleep, I mean, that's really where we're supposed to be kind of processing. The body's doing all this thing in the night to kind of move things through our day out. Can you speak into any of that? Have you dealt with that?
I have heard that. Two patterns I've seen is I've had parishioners, husband loses a wife,
okay,
and don't come back for several weeks, and when I'm checking on, I can't go back. We had so much joy and meaning in that place. So that's one where that, so we find another place, or we find healing and come back.
Right.
And some of that, not feeling like my bedtime, my sleep time it's not the same. I don't know if they're losing the quantity of sleep as much as the quality of sleep. You wake up, you spent, in some cases, a lot of folks that I've talked to that have lost spouse are older.
Yes.
So if you lost someone that you've been married to for 50 years, unless you're, I Love Lucy and you're in two separate beds.
Right.
There is that, you can tell someone is not, even now, when my wife is not in the bed for some reason, I know. I don't have to listen. I don't have to reach over.
Right.
I know, I feel. And I could see how that would be very different. And why that person's not there. They're not in this life anymore. It's not like they took a vacation.
That's it. And I have read some on the neurological side, because it's made me very curious. Okay. Curious to the physiological component to grief that I felt completely uneducated about. Let's put it that way. I'm like, all these years, and I'm not old, but I've never heard a widow say, I had brain fog. And I'm like, okay, this is newer language. I'm able to utilize COVID as an example to help people correlate. Did you have a post symptom when going through COVID or post COVID symptoms of brain fog? That was a term. We hear that in chemo, that there's a chemo fog. There are certain things. Well, there's also a cognitive fog that happens with grief or great loss, let's just say. And I have heard widows say that they feel lost. And so back to this thing about presence, but I'm going to keep going back to this scripture, and we may have to just read that a few more times because I think it's going to take a little bit more to sink in of just what the truth has to say. So he started us with truth, so we're going to reinforce that. I think you need to read those again because
I'll go straight to the verse that applies to Watchman.
Yes.
Psalm 121 verse 8. The Lord will watch over your journeys, whether going or coming, from now until forever. And the way they do it, forever from now. From now until forever. From now.
Wow.
So it's speaking to, of course, to Israel, but it's also speaking to us in our time. So there's only 8 verses, but I'm going to give you those verse 1, 2, 5, and 8.
Okay.
All together.
Thank you.
I raise my eyes towards the mountains. Where will my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. The Lord is your protector. The Lord is your shade right beside you. The sun won't strike you during the day, neither will the moon at night. The Lord will protect or watch over your journeys, whether going or coming, from now on until forever from now.
Y'all, I'm telling you, Psalms 121, it's a promise. This is a scripture of promise. And so many times we can get so literal when we read the scripture that it only applied to them. But I don't believe that. I believe that it transcends time. And really this, when we're talking about even the sleep, if you believe what he just read, then there should be rest in your soul. And if you have rest in your soul, then you should be able to rest in your body. And I think rest, I have some friends that are not fully Jewish, but they have adopted Sabbath, or what do they call it on Friday night? Shabbat. And I have gotten to experience that. And there is something to their process that is slower and it feels restful, I guess is what I want to say. Like it's telling you, hey, we've had all week, but for this time, this window of sundown Friday night into sundown Saturday night, the ending and the beginnings of the day, that we're going to block this time to remember. And so I have started using this term since last year. When you're facing loss and people with terminal illness, pain is very triggering, especially when you love people and you can't fix them and you're watching them decline.
Right.
It is hard to separate. This can become very distant in your mind because the reality becomes so large, so loud, that we can forget what he's reminding us of. And I'm trying to learn how to articulate that this window of, let's say, the end of life season, not all get a progressive end of life. I'm not even sure that that's our best result. Those who fall asleep in their sleep, it's sudden, but it seems kind of nice. You know what I'm saying? A painless death. And that we've had some in our church where she kind of made a sound and she had been in the hospital for some heart things. They had not dismissed her, but released her from the hospital. And then she passed in her sleep. He was beside her. And in one account, that sounds kind of tough, but I'm like, what other place would you rather be than with your loved one crossing over into eternity? So I have started to try to wrap my head around that there, not just the sanctity of life, but there's a sacred, it's sacred.
Yes.
In our agony, even in the agony of witnessing some kind of not so pretty ways that through diagnosis or mostly, whether it's dementia, Alzheimer's, I mean, there's so, Parkinson's, there's some that are harder diseases to witness the decline of, to see that season as sacred. But I really want to celebrate the widows and widowers who stay the course and are the spouse that is there through sickness and in health, and did honor their spouse in sickness and in health, and their dignity of protecting them in the process of these things. And so I don't think we talk enough about it, is what I'm trying to say, Pastor Hank. And just that we're not celebrating the widow, and just how magnificent this part of the cycle of life is. And it's very, it's not celebrated really, because it's kind of ugly. It can be very ugly. And so I hope you can put a bow on what I'm trying to say, on just, have you, in your process of pastoring, you're walking into these end of days things, and has the Lord given you revelation? I mean, this is revelation in itself, but has there been other things where there may have been times that you really didn't even want to walk into the room, but you had to walk into the room, and then after you left the room, you knew He was with you in the room?
There is that fear and trepidation every single time, and there is blessing every single time.
Wow.
One of the things that I learned early on in ministry is that when someone gets a diagnosis, and as you mentioned, dementia, which I can talk about in a minute.
Okay.
When you get a very bad diagnosis, God can work miracles.
Yes.
Sometimes God does, and sometimes the miracle is different. And what I like to tell people is, especially when it comes to times like hospice has been called in.
Thank you.
You have what many of my clergy friends call the gift of time. You have the gift of time. You're not going through, you don't have to go through your busy days anymore thinking there's always, we got tomorrow or the next day or the next year. You got the gift of time. Doctor says you've got whatever, days, hours, months, whatever. Use it. Use that gift of time.
Beautiful.
Cherish it. Build those memories. Do the things that and I'm not talking about bucket lists.
Yes.
I'm talking about relational things that matter.
Right. If you have some things unsaid, then you need to say them.
Do those. And if you haven't found Jesus yet, now's the time to say, well, maybe it's true. Let me give it a shot, because that is an eternal decision that you make. What people can tend to do is withdraw, either denial, or they can just I can't handle this. So I'm just gonna kind of bottle it up, do it on my own. You mentioned dementia a couple of times, and I was thinking as you were telling your viewers about some of the ways that grief comes upon people.
Yes.
I have a family member who remained unnamed, whose wife is on that slide of dementia, and the family is going, please talk to us, talk to somebody, get some help. And being a good old American male, he's not, and it's
hard to watch.
It's kind of killing him and hurting a lot of things.
Right.
And so, if anything, when I looked at the scripture, I saw that, God, number one, is that protector, is that watchman.
Yes.
But then God surrounds us with watchmen, and don't ignore them. If you don't have to be one. Sometimes many times we're in the place where we need watchmen watching over
us,
not us being the watchman.
Thank you.
Sorry if I just made a loud sound.
No, that's good.
So that's if there are any viewers out there, maybe you haven't lost someone, but you are going through rough times, you're struggling, grief.
Mm-hmm.
Find somebody that'll listen. Find some pastor somewhere. If you're in Franklin, there's great pastors. You mentioned Charles.
Yeah.
Here at High Street, I hear that guy's pretty good too. You know, but find a trusted friend, find a group, and the support groups around are phenomenal.
And there's more than you think, and sometimes it does take asking around. And this thing about counseling, there's still somewhat of a stigma on that I must be really bad off, you know, and to admit that, and I want to say you don't have to be really bad off. It just means that you have some heavier circumstances going on, and when you lose your spouse, you've lost your person that you process with, and you have a lot of thoughts after a loss. I said grief demands a response, and your brain goes into overdrive for a time because there is alarms going off. This survival instinct starts to happen. So many things that for those that are a little more of the old school, their husband did a fair amount of things around the house, or inside the house, outside the house. Some of them were the cooks in the house. Some of them were the ones who did the grocery shopping in the house. And now this is the complexity of grief, is that the widow and widower is daily, it's a daily facing. It's in your face, especially in the first year. And I will say 9 years later, it still haunts you. It is kind of, it still comes up. And especially around those dates, it's like this muscle memory of like, you start to feel off and you're kind of dreading it. And, you know, until I experienced it myself, I would have thought, well, that won't happen to me. They're just kind of.
But you've been with it long enough, you know what's coming. You start to feel down one day, or what you say, oh, I know what's coming. You know?
And so there is giving yourself permission. I would say that is the biggest thing I have learned, is to give yourself permission to grieve, permission to say the things, permission to allow the anger out, permission to go talk to somebody and not feel like a failure by doing that. And yes, there is some amazing pastors here, and I would say most of them have that compassionate or maybe some counseling background, but not all of them do.
And we need, if we were well trained, we are honest with those that we're talking with. When someone is obviously not just needing to express some things or find, you know, theologically, how does this work out? Or, you know, in your experience, Pastor Hank, here's the name of a good counselor you need. Please promise me you'll go. We don't dabble where we shouldn't be dabbling where we're not trained. And seminaries don't train pastors to be pastoral counselors or psychiatrists or anything like that, unless they hold a dual degree.
Right. And maybe in some of the bigger cities, they have a staff that does have in-house counselors, if you want to say, but we really don't live in an area that does. And so you do have to go outside of that. And sometimes it is financial why people aren't doing it. But I am just coming to the season in life that I believe that that there is more nonprofits like ourselves. And no, I'm not certified grief coach or grief counselor either. It's experiential. A lot of pastoral care is also experiential. Yes, you have a theology degree and things like that. So there is more training on your biblical perspective. And that is reinforcing what we have going on here. And I really believe that that is the truth. The truth is what's going to set us free. And if we don't know the truth, then we become lost in our circumstances. And so that feels sad, and I want to counter that narrative that if you are a widow or widower that has lost your footing, we like to use that term, because the rug has been pulled out from underneath you, and you're disappointed sometimes because the family members you expected to show up didn't. And maybe some of your coworkers that you expected to be at the funeral didn't. And you thought your husband had prepared certain things before your passing, and he didn't. And you find out after his passing the amount of things that you have to now deal with after. And do you see what I'm saying? And now you don't really want to go into the grocery store because so many people kind of want to know, how are you doing? And you really don't know how you're doing. You really don't know how to answer that to them in the present day without crying. And so you stop going to the grocery store, and then you're not eating as good because you're really not cooking for two anymore, and that makes you sad. Do you see all of the list of things? And this isn't to push any of that, but I just want to overview just a few of the things that can happen, and that is minute to the reality that widows and widowers are walking through, and how necessary community is, how necessary, what is the church really good at coming around when the going gets tough. Can you just second that? What is the benefit of the church? Can you tell me?
The church has cornered the market on one thing, and that is compassion and grace.
Thank you.
When I was planning church, when I was a church planner, we struggled with the fact that we couldn't. I know your church has a great sports program. We couldn't outcompete the city sports leagues. We couldn't outcompete. We're going to have a concert where we couldn't outcompete the Intello's Pavilion, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And we came to realize that we're not trying to reach people with concerts or sports. We're trying to reach people with the love and compassion of Jesus Christ.
Thank you.
That is forever and ever, and meets you wherever it is. And though we are human, that grace can flow through us. And I think that is where the church is. If you're hurting, even if you've been a part of a church where there was no help, or in some bad cases where churches can be harmful and toxic. That's not all of them.
That's not all of them.
Find that community of Christian grace where you can be fed and can be nurtured and can also then give back.
That's it. And so another term for the Watchman, and we're coming along here on this, is I like to use the term being on the lookout. I didn't say this before, but the widow walk in architecture,
I know where you're going,
is a balcony on the top of a house in the seafaring places, let's say Boston or Nantucket or Maine, where the women would be looking out to see if their sailors were coming in. And not all of them made it home. And so it got dubbed the widow walk. And so again, it is, I don't want to call it a walk of shame. I think there can be, widows feel like there's a stigma on it, in a sense that they're kind of the word widow doesn't have a positive connotation ultimately. And at the end of the day, I've been asked, like, Micah, do you really want to capture the market on widows? Is that what you want your identity to be? Like, is that what you want to be known for? That was the question I was challenged with. And I'm like, I don't really feel like that's what I'm going to be known for. But if I do feel that I have been charged with the call to bring a voice to a community at large that doesn't always use their voice. And so if that, on an algorithm, if you want to say, connects you to widows and allows you to start thinking more about the widow in your neighborhood, I'm okay with that. Because no, this is not a job just for me. This is a job to remind you to be a good neighbor, to remind you to check on your neighbor, to remind you that if you've seen their car in the driveway for 3 days and that was not normal, please go and knock on the door. And this is how we break the grief that so easily covers us. And again, the passage talked about that shadow. And so I believe it so much that he has gone over us. That was the verse before number 8, right?
Yeah, that was, I think, 5. The Lord is your protector. The Lord is your shade right beside you. The sun won't strike you during the day, neither will the moon at night.
He's your shade. You know, like he's covering us. Like it's hard sometimes in our flesh to believe that's true. I have to believe that you've had people say, how do I go on from here?
Yes. I would expect everyone says that, whether they admit it or not, if there's any depth of relationship. And the answer is, here's a great kind of a human illustration. You know, you can say, and it's true, with time and God's grace, those wounds are healed. And I had another preacher tell me this when I was just starting out. Picture a vase that gets broken. That's you. That's your life just got shattered, right? And then someone starts to glue it back together, piece by little piece, piece by little piece. When it's done, you still see the cracks, right? They're still there. It's very visible and evident that this was a shattered vase, but it's whole again. And those cracks are the memories, are the good times, are the bad times. Those cracks are those wonderful things that the relationship, in a sense, is shattered. Your time that you thought you were going to have for the next 50 years with this person, right? But let those cracks. It's like a scar. I got a little scar here when I was a kid. The scar's there, and it's got a great memory of my granddaddy taking black electrical tape and wrapping my arm just to keep it from bleeding. It's like a scar. Those scratches or lines on that vase, and it will happen. Yes. You've got to have the faith that it will. Will it be hard? Yes. If you do it by yourself, it's going to be especially hard.
Right. And this wrapping around, he's even talking about with that example, to me, that's a sign of resilience. That it's, how do you strength train? I use this term all the time too. The metaphors that parallel so many different things of like, why do you keep doing it? Because you're building resistance, and the resistance becomes the resilience. We learn how to not brace ourselves for the hit, but to embrace. We can embrace these times, and it is hard. I'm telling you, it's a juxtaposition, but I'm telling you, the spirit part of you can embrace it. It's the flesh part of us that wants to brace for it. And pain does have a way to, like you said earlier, put a distance between us. I don't know about you, and not that we need to get into marriage topics, but you know, when you kind of have a spat with your spouse, do you just default that you just want to start hugging them really good, and or do you want to take a walk and take some space? You know, there is something about that space, but that space between is a real thing with loss. Because when he said like, hey, they're not coming back, I read something that neurologically, even 3 years later, there's a level of, if you said denial of that, like somehow we compartmentalize to think they've gone on a trip. That is easier to manage, to cope. And yes, logically, somehow we can say we know they're gone, but in our heart, somehow they've gone on a trip. And I didn't even know I had really done that myself. But when we basically dug ground for our gym before my husband passed.
Okay.
And then it got finished after he passed. And when we had the initial service, it didn't feel good that day. And it was such a celebratory day, but somehow, in an illogical way, it didn't bring him back.
Yeah.
And it was another, I would say, slap in the face that he's really gone. Like, he's really gone. Like, this is how interesting grief is that we know he's gone. He wasn't in bed with me those years. And, the reality of the present day, but still there was a mystery to the wandering and the hoping for something. And so I've had to learn how to not hate that part of the process and use that as a homing beacon. And I use the term longing now. There's a longing to belong, this longing for home. And I really have had to sit with, and I don't hear this type of term a lot from widows. Why I'm trying to articulate it, because I feel like the Lord is drawing me to the language to search out the word for the truth of the matter, is the desire for eternity has increased inside of me since his passing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Why do you think that is?
Me?
Yes. What is it?
I would say it's got to be, to me, maybe I'm seeing it on a surface level, but eternity, we love God. We want to be with God for eternity. And yet that can be very theoretical. That can be very out there.
Okay.
But the human being you love the most, Micah, you believe with all your heart is in eternity.
Right.
You're ready to go. And some of these very elderly saints, but they will literally tell me, I'm ready to go now. I know I'm healthy, but I know where my better life is. And it's a hard thing. Hey, it's not your time yet.
Right.
It's not your time.
Right.
But I sense in that similar longing, it's not just to be with your spouse.
Yeah.
But it's to be, there is a wholeness and completeness, a shalom in heaven that we never get a sense of here. And that is drawing you and calling you, and you'll get there.
That's it.
In your time.
We're passing through, okay? We're passing through.
This world is not our true home.
And I don't want to say that longing feels like, I don't want to go into the extreme of suicidal thoughts. I'm not talking about that, y'all. I'm just saying that that missing is a real thing. And instead of me just trying to put that on a face, I've elevated that because I truly believe that that's the longing he has for all of us to enter into our eternal rest too. That longing that I have, I believe, is part of the Father's heart, and that he longs for you to come home. Not just me, because I'm missing my husband, is what I'm trying to say here. And so it helps me articulate, I believe, the character of the Father and his true intent for us here in the midst of the suffering, if you want to say. And I love the prodigal story, the prodigal son story, because it says that he wasn't in his right mind. Okay, so he wasn't fully reconciled or repentant, if you want to say. He was just hungry. The flesh was saying, man, I'm not doing good here. My dad's slaves or servants eat better than me. Maybe he'll just let me, be one of them again. And then to know that there was a Father anticipating his return, looking out. Okay, there's another passage of a father who was awaiting, and he said, you were dead and now you're alive. And that is really something that I believe is a transformative story, that we can walk through dead seasons in our life and come out alive, more alive than we were before. And in this life, thank you, in this life, that we can become more alive in the last seasons of our life, on the back end, which I call the life after death story, than what we were in that story.
Can I pose a question to you?
Please.
You were talking about resilience. I think that's very true. And that's a catchword these days.
Yes.
but you shared very interesting to me the experience with the gym that was being built. That's been 7 or 8 years ago now.
Yes.
That it has been built in the celebration. Did you find back then, like every time you went back into that new building, that gym, that it got easier to go back in, and that the feeling, have you experienced celebratory joy in that place?
Right.
To me, it sounds, well, go ahead.
Right. I will say, when you talked about earlier that some widows or widowers can't face coming back into those congregations, I have walked with those who left because they saw their husband everywhere. Because for those who really did serve in the church, volunteer, whatever it was, they saw them by the trash can. They saw them in the kitchen. They saw them in the fellowship hall. They saw them up in the congregation or in the choir, all the things. And it's just too much. And so for some, they really do have to find a new start. And that makes complete sense. For us, in his passing, we got a new start in the gym. And so all my memories with him were in our dairy, the barn. And so that was different because we kind of got a new building but we didn't have to leave. So that is unique to my story. But I will also say it's bittersweet. That's what I will say. It's bittersweet because when rites of passage happen, you're celebrating them and you feel sad that he's not here to watch it. So that is the juxtaposition of me today, is that we look what the Lord has done, and man, he would have loved this, kind of a thing. And so you can't fully celebrate it when you have that twinge of pain to remind you. And that's, again, gets me curious about, what do they see? What do they know? What does the Lord tell them about what's going on? Can my husband go to him and say, hey, are my kids doing okay? Like, what are they up to? And he tells them. I mean, we just don't know. And it's made me more playful about eternity to think that a good father allows his kids to come and ask him questions. And how can he answer all the questions to all the people? I don't know. But I have to believe that he does. And we have the beautiful scriptures. It says, what does it say? Come, all the children, come unto me. Isn't that the scripture in the New Testament? Come like that's children. Jesus. Yeah. And so that's okay.
The best thing you had asked earlier about, we don't know. The Bible is not clear about what life in heaven is like. But Paul does say, then I will see, now I see in a mirror as dimly, but then I will see us face to face. He talks about like a cloudy mirror or imperfections.
Right.
And the best I can draw from that is, though we will never be God, we are not created to be God, being in the presence of God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit in that realm will expand our mind and our spirits and our souls to the point where you use the word awareness or something. I don't even think he's asking, how my kids doing? I think he knows.
Wow, I love that.
See what I'm saying?
Yes.
God is still God. God is still God. We're not God, but in that
I love that. They can still receive.
The barrier is gone.
Wow, that's beautiful. I really like that.
That's what I believe anyway. Might be right, might be wrong.
Right, that they're close. So I hope y'all, look, this is an endless conversation because the life after death story, what am I trying to do? I thank you, Pastor Hank, for getting us to the word, because that really was a springboard into this conversation. And if he wouldn't have taken the time to prepare, that might not have leapt off the page, we like to say, or a rhema word. So many different terms we can use. And what does that mean? I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to encourage you. when you are feeling in that place, it doesn't matter how many times you've read it or if you've never read it. I know people that just did that kind of like close your eyes, flip the page and point, and it was on point that day. That verse was on point, and he will remind you. And the Psalms, if you don't know where to start and you're dealing with emotional turmoil, read the Psalms, okay? Because David was the man who did the best in explaining the heart anguish, if you want to call it, the lament, we like to say. But there's more than lament in there. And most of the time he starts in his flesh, and by the end of it, he has praise and adoration. And I'm here to tell you, that's the breakthrough. That is really the breakthrough. And I'm going to be singing about that, just about how the joy of the Lord is our strength. When we find joy in the Lord, we can basically walk through hard things with a measure of strength. Some people call it grace. It's his mercy and kindness as well that he gives us his strength. But how do we renew our strength? By reading words that give us strength, and they're life-giving and they're life-breathing. When we don't have the words, someone does. There's words that are speaking over us. And when we feel cloudy and full of loud voices that aren't encouraging anything positive, get back to a positive word called the good news. It's here to bring life in the midst of death, and to remind you that you're protected, that he is covering you. And if you feel like it's too far and too, like you said, ethereal, that he feels too far from you, please get in touch with your pastor. He will make time for you, right?
If he's worth it, he or she is worth their salt, yes. And if not, you were mentioning, I'm just throwing this in there too. You mentioned earlier about getting help. We are here in Franklin, Southampton County. I've done some research on this myself. I think one of the great callings on High Street, at least while I'm here, might very well be, we are in a mental health desert, meaning it's hard to get. There's not many mental health practitioners and resources, and it's got to be affordable. We do have, I'm not saying there's nothing, but I think that's part of what God's calling us to make a difference in. So if you think you need help beyond what your pastor or your friend or whoever it is, then go seek that help. And the cool thing about it's not like your general practitioner. You go see a counselor and it's not a good fit. Hey, you can just go find another one. And please don't do this all the time in the spiritual sense, but if you go to a church or a pastor and it's not working, go find another one. Now, I don't want you to jump around all over the place, but find your fit. Find your fit.
Yeah. And it'll help you find your new footing. And one step in front of the other, and then you look back and you said, I don't know how I did it. And I didn't know I could walk a mile in those shoes, especially not 10,000 miles. But we can't do it in our own strength. It is through him that empowers us to keep doing it. It's worth doing. Life is worth living. Choosing life is a good cause. And for those who in their elderly years and see that person go off and they pray and tell the Lord, I really want to be with them. I really do kind of think he grants it. I think that sometimes some of us, the Lord does hear our prayers, and sometimes he takes some of the elderly out in very minor things, if you want to say, and we're like, that shouldn't have killed them. And I just have this hunch, Pastor Hank, that they had been having some conversations, and the Lord figured out a way to release them. And so sometimes when things don't add up, I think there's more than meets the eye.
I've got a meeting in just a minute, but I want to throw out one parting thought from my side. This is your blog. Charlie Brown and them, they'll say good grief.
Mm.
I want folks out there that might be listening or watching. There is good grief. Grief is not something to be avoided. And a good pastor or a good counselor will help you to grieve well. That's the whole purpose. You've got to grieve. And that's when you work through that shattered vase I was talking about. Through good grief, you can be whole again, and you can have those memories, and you can remember well. So I just want to leave with that.
Hey,
good grief, people.
You've given us the title of today's episode, Good Grief, and see you next time. Bye-bye.